when you're in theater, especially if you're a performer, you have to get up every night and do the thing. You have to believe in it. And that means you have to believe that someone who has disliked it is wrong, either because they made a mistake or because they're an idiot. And, maybe sometime later you can look back on it and maybe you'll still think that they're wrong and they're an idiot, or maybe you won't, especially if you've had something successful since then. But in the moment, you're going to be hurt and angry, and I'm not going to impose on that. I'm not going to demand that you like me.
He is the National Theater and Dance Editor and Chief Theater Critic at TimeOut New York.
He is also president of the New York Drama Critics Circle and sometimes graces the stage himself.
New York City treasure Adam Feldman is our critically acclaimed guest on today's episode. My name is Nancy Magarill. I'm a singer, songwriter, composer, performer, graphic and web designer.
And I'm Peter Michael Marino, and I'm a writer, producer, creator, performer, and educator.
We are New York-based artists you may or may not have heard of.
And we are here to introduce you to other artists you may or may not have heard of. I was trying to remember, Adam, I think you once did one of my Desperately Seeking the Exit.
I did. It was a great success.
Right. Yeah. And then you did that thing during lockdown.
Wait, what do you mean he did one of? What does that mean?
So I got so bored doing my show that I would have other people do it, but I would break it up into 5 parts, and then different people would take a different section. I believe Adam had the critics section of the show.
No, I had the first part where I was playing you, and I was very ingenuous and excited.
But you were also in that lockdown thing. I wrote a big essay called "I'm Not Watching Your Online Theater Show."
Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
That it was, it's total satire, and people of course thought it was real and of course attacked me, and I loved it. So then I decided to do a reading of it, and Adam and several others came on this thing called Zoom at the time and read that. So
the dark times. The dark times.
Yeah. We never hang out in real life. I barely see you at shows. Sometimes you post hey, I have tickets for a show in Chelsea tonight. Let me know if you're available. And I'm the kind of person that's I need to know everything about the show before I can say, yes, I'm going to the show. So I never respond to those.
Well, you're welcome to respond in the future, or just I can put you on my list of people that I ask when I need to go to shows. There's going to be a lot coming up. This March and April are brutal this year, as always.
Why is it? Because a lot of things are opening?
Yes. So the theater season basically peaks in 2 places, in late fall and then again in late March and April. It's really packed. The Broadway season's really packed into April, and that's because the Tony Awards cutoff date is at the end of April, and everyone wants to open it right at the end of that and stay fresh in mind. The result of that is you get sometimes, as much as a third of the season packed into the last 3 or 4 weeks or more. So this year is a little less crazy than last year. Last year was the worst it's ever been. We had 12 shows opening in the last 9 days of the season.
Oh my
Broadway,
goodness.
and that was crazy and impossible. This year they've learned from that a little bit, and it's stretched out a bit more through the month and through the end of March, but still not great. So it's going to be a busy time. And then, of course, the off-Broadway shows all know that that's happening in April, so they all open at the end of February and the beginning of March. So it ends up extending the super busy season for a few months in this. And then it drops out, and there's nothing happening in the summer.
And everybody wants you there.
Well, not me personally necessarily, but they want critics there, yeah.
I would think they would want you.
Well, of course they want me. No, but I mean they want the first string critics there, and sometimes there aren't enough of us to go around for the number of shows that are opening.
Do you ever have time to see stuff that you're not working for?
Sure.
Yeah.
I end up seeing a lot of shows that I don't review just for time reasons. Sometimes I just can't swing it in my schedule, but I've seen them and I've enjoyed them, and I can consider them for prizes, and I can use them to track the artist's progress through the years and the rest of it. And sometimes I'll go to encore shows or concerts or cabaret shows, that I know I'm not going to be writing about because their runs aren't long enough. But that I just want to see what's up.
Can you actually relax and enjoy yourself and just enjoy a show?
Yes.
Or is that critic always there?
I enjoy it much more if I know that I'm not going to be writing about it, because I don't have to have my hackles out.
Yeah.
And also the things that, to be fair, the things that I choose to go to are probably ones that are already more likely to be things that I'll enjoy, because they're self-selected. They're not a total selection. The problem, as I've often said, being a theater critic is a great job in many ways, but it is a double-edged sword. I get to see everything that I want to see, and I get to see them for free and from great seats. And also, I have to see a lot of things that I would never otherwise see, and that can be a challenge. because when you're seeing, 150, 200, 250 shows a year, and you want to keep excited and enthusiastic and engaged, that can be a bit of a burnout challenge, no question.
Do you take notes during? Are you one of those people who takes notes, or you just remember
Yes,
everything?
yes, yes. I take notes. I take notes.
Oh, how could you remember it?
Uh,
That would be
Well,
impossible
they
to
give us the
remember.
scripts for most shows, and that is a huge advance in reviewing technology because in the olden days, people had to really sort of be stenographers a lot of the time. And while you're busy trying to remember exactly the wording of the line you just heard, you're missing what's happening on stage. And that's always
Right.
a bad thing. So I take notes. Luckily, I don't have to take verbatim dialogue notes, but I do take, I track my response to the show as it's happening, whether I'm engaged, what's exciting, what seems to be catching fire, what audience response is like, whether the applause for a musical number seems like polite applause,
Yeah.
because to mark the end of a number, or whether it seems like a genuine expression of
Enthusiastic.
enthusiasm, and the enthusiasm bubbling over. Those are two different things, and you do get a sense of that when you're in the audience, and you do want to be part of an audience to let that happen. But you also sort of have to distance yourself a little bit from the audience reaction, in part because it's a press preview. The audiences are a little sweetened. They will have friends of the show there to lead standing ovations and the rest of it. And also just because something is catching on with an audience at that moment doesn't necessarily mean that it's great. And just because it's not doesn't mean it's bad. Sometimes, so you do have to retain a certain editorial independence, but you also don't want to forget that the live audience experience is part of what makes theater great.
Have you guys noticed that over the last, I'm going to say probably 5+ years, that every show gets a standing ovation now?
Yeah, a lot of shows do. What's funny is a lot of the best shows don't. When a show has been really effective and interesting and intellectually stimulating and provocative, and dark especially, you don't necessarily feel like leaping to your feet and going, yay, yay, yay. You're still in a bit of a stunned silence. And it's but yes, a lot of the standing ovations have become much more common. You see this on television, you see this in live audiences for events. People just stand up when the hosts come on. They stand up when every guest comes on. That's just the culture's changing a little bit, and I don't
Mick
love it.
Jagger got one at the Oscars last night.
Yeah,
Did you guys watch the Oscars?
No.
yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was wild. I'm like, oh, Mick Jagger comes out and everybody just goes nuts.
Right, everyone. But anytime you're enthusiastic about anything, you stand up.
Yeah.
I'm seeing more mid-show standing ovations recently, which was extremely rare
Wow.
until recently.
They would hate that in the UK. They would hate
Yeah,
that on
right?
the West End
Absolutely
so
hate
much.
it. I saw it at Sunset Boulevard. I saw it at Color Purple. I saw it Gypsy.
Yeah.
It's happening, and it really was extremely rare before.
I have to say, watching her in Sunset Boulevard sing for me was such an experience because I've never seen a singer pull in an audience so beautifully as she does with her voice without belting it out. I mean, occasionally she does, but what the control that she had and the way that she worked every single song was so special for me to watch. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, I think she's terrific in it, and also that particular part and in this particular production really plays to her strengths. It doesn't.
Yeah.
She gets to use her stage performance as a singer, her experience as a concert singer, in ways that actors don't usually get to do on stage, because they have to be beholden to their
I
character.
think she's actually also drawing from her experience as a pussycat doll and knowing how to work the audience,
Well, that's
knowing
what I
how
mean.
to
Absolutely.
play
Yeah.
to the audience,
That's
right?
what I mean. Her experience as
Yeah.
a concert singer, as a pop singer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It comes in really handy in this because the character in the production is kind of inside and outside of reality, and so she can relate to the audience in a different way.
It was so sad to see the closing notice because in my mind, I was like, how can Sunset Boulevard close? It just put someone else in it. And some insider just told me recently, like, nope, it's her show and they're not doing it without her.
It's her show, and also it's never been a huge success of a show. It didn't make money in its first run, even though it ran for a couple of years. It didn't make money when Glenn brought it back for a few months for that concert version that they did at the Palace. And it's just not a beloved show, really. It's not that great a show. I mean, it's a good
No,
show.
it
It has a
isn't.
couple of
So
good songs, but
people are going to this one because it's an event. Is that right?
yes, and Nicole's
Yeah.
great in it, and I think the production is really smart, really interesting, a really good way to approach the limits of this material, but the material remains to some extent limited.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. We talk about this a lot about not wanting to criticize a show. I don't have a problem with it. Pete doesn't love to criticize. Do you ever feel like guilty or weird about panning a show, or do you ever pan a show actually?
Yeah, I pan shows fairly often. I try to,
Yeah.
there's different ways of panning a show, and I try to save my fire because there's certain kinds of reviews that people like to read that are sort of big slash and burn, funny, negative reviews. Everyone likes those, and you have to be careful with those because the temptation is to write them for everything that you don't like, and that's not fair. It's not fair to the artist, and it's not really appropriate. Sometimes you just, bad theater is so boring and frustrating that you
Yeah.
go out sometimes just feeling very angry that you've been
Yes.
through that experience, but you don't necessarily want to take that out. If you're a critic, you don't want to take that out on the production just because it didn't happen to work. If it's trying for something good and something new and something original, then you write about it in a different way. And if it just seems like a cash grab,
Yeah.
an IP cash grab. No offense to Peter. Shows that use existing IP or shows that use existing catalogs of music, or both. That is a higher. If they work, then great, and I'm happy to say that they work. And if they don't work, then you can sort of feel free as a writer to be a little looser with your meanness because the goals are a little lower. So that's not to say that a lot of work hasn't gone into it, and everyone who's doing that show is trying. No one's trying to make a bad show. They're all trying to do their best, but it's just that you want to encourage people. You want to encourage originality and interest and intellectual ambition as much as you can, and so you try to be a little nicer when those are concerned. Do I feel bad? Yeah, I feel bad all the time, but also it's my job. So
Right.
it's my job to absorb that feeling bad is the price I pay for doing my job. Because I think if I didn't feel bad, I would be a sociopath, and I would be, more likely to be unfair. I think to the ecology in general, and also I think the type of person who could be just completely ruthless all the time is not necessarily the kind of person who can respond to theater in the humanity that it requires.
And talk a little bit about, and I don't know if this actually this probably ties into the meanness or non-meanness that timeout changed the parameters of the star system, right? So, and I believe Timeout is Timeout the only American publication that still uses the star system?
I think the Post still does.
Oh.
And
Do they review theater?
There are others. Yeah, Johnny
Yeah.
Oleksinski still writes reviews for them. So, he's their general entertainment reporter, but he does write theater reviews. He's very opinionated, sharply opinionated. Yes, the star system is helpful in some ways. It's a sort of less readers know immediately what they're in for in the review.
Yeah.
It's also limiting in some ways, especially so we don't have half stars, and so that's always been a bit frustrating.
Yeah.
The history of stars at Timeout is a very particular one, and it would be too long and boring to go into right now. I'm going to write something about it, I think, this week, explaining how it's changed and why and what the ratings mean now. But the short version is, until fairly recently, we had a 5-star system, and the 4 or 5-star reviews would get a recommendation check. Now we still have a 5-star system, but the 3-star reviews also get a recommendation check. But what that looks like on paper is that we have just made our standards easier for recommendation. That's not actually what it means. What it means is that what used to be a 4-star review, what used to have to be 4 stars if we were recommending it, now can be either 3 or 4 stars and still recommending it. And anything that we don't recommend, we simply don't assign what would formerly have been 1, 2, or 3 stars to. And we have more.
1, 2, or 3.
Yeah,
So if you want to give a show a 3-star review,
what used to be a 3-star review.
you don't see those 3 stars anymore.
No, you see 3 stars now.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, but it's a recommended review. What it really is doing is it's the problem with the 5 star. Okay, I'll just give you what happened. When Timeout introduced the system in the aughts, it was a 6 star system. They decided, someone decided, oh, we'll be our own thing. We'll have 6 stars, and so.
And this is also because was based in the UK
this
originally.
was based in the UK.
And
No, but it was
star
unusual in the
system
UK too. No one has 6 stars. They decided
Right.
that to distinguish themselves, they would have 6 stars. And there were no half stars, and so if it was above the median point, which was 4, 5, or 6, it would be recommended, and if it was below that, it would be not recommended. But then they got a lot of criticism for the 6th star, and so they eliminated the 6th star. But the threshold for recommendation remained 4. It was out of 5. Now, if you give something 5 stars, what you mean is it's one of the best things of the year. So then there was this vast territory covered by things that you recommend, whether you recommend them very enthusiastically or just sort of slightly, and that all looked like 4 stars. And so ended up getting a lot of 4-star reviews. That wasn't particularly, I think, great. I mean, it was great for advertisers who could use 4 stars for
Right.
a wide assortment of shows, but it was frustrating for those of us who wanted to indicate some level of difference in enthusiasm, and so now that's been modified, and basically the 3 and 4 stars cover what used to be only covered by 4 stars, and the difference is that we don't say, when it's not recommended, we don't say 1 or 2 or 2.5 star, whatever. We just don't put stars on it. It's like the
Right.
Michelin Guide or whatever. It's like either you get stars or you don't. Except that the star system starts at 3 through 5 instead of being 1 through 3 because it just looks wrong to have 3 stars. Doesn't look like the top rating. That's all.
There's a theory in the Edinburgh Fringe, which is very big on stars. A lot of the Scottish papers still use stars, and independent writers use stars. Every year, let's get rid of the star system. The star system's terrible. Let's get rid of the star system. And then, like that August, the whole festival is full of stars everywhere. Right? You don't like the star system until you get 5. I see how this argument works.
I mean, it's frustrating for me as a writer because because we're one of the only people using stars, often my review will be reduced to 4 stars, says Adam Feldman of Time Out. And in fact, I've worked really hard to craft, a clever and I hope, insightful review, and it ends up just getting reduced to these little, icons.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
For the show and for the ad company, it's great.
Yep, it's easy. It's shorthand.
Yep.
Well, sometimes it's hard to get a pull quote even from a good review. I have a client now who has a
true.
great review, and I'm like, I have looked over this thing 25 times. There's no pull quote. There's nothing you can use.
And I
It's
know
so
that sometimes
weird.
my review,
That is
my
weird.
language, but you know what? On the times when I've written something and I've said, oh, you know what? This is going to be 100% what they pull, they never pull it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like I loved SpongeBob SquarePants. I gave them 20 things to quote from me, and they quoted something I couldn't believe that they pulled from me.
And you're
Bizarre.
going to go to your deathbed remembering what that was.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, I was like, come on, guys. I just said the thing right out loud.
I mean, maybe talked about this with another guest, but again, going back to Edinburgh, the thing you really want is to get a 1-star review and a 5-star review. Or a series of 2s and 4s or 1s and 5s, because that suddenly makes your show, I guess they call it Marmite shows over there, right? It suddenly it's like, oh, I'm either going to love it or hate it. I look forward to both.
They don't call it Marmite shows here, but
No.
yeah, I think a niche show, an acquired taste, whatever you want to call it. There are certain shows that really play very well with a small group of audience members. Sometimes for reasons that I share, sometimes for reasons that I don't. But a lot of the best work, for example, that goes on, a lot of the most inventive, most interesting and innovative work is in these very small off houses. That's partly because they work mainly from grant money and not from ticket sales. But also, the audience for that kind of work is fairly small. You can't really put that in, on stage at the Imperial and expect, 1,700 people to show up for it. They won't like it. It's not meant for that kind of audience.
Unless you're O'Mary, I think.
O'Mary
they
is
broke
not
them
experimental. O'Mary is extremely accessible. I mean,
Do you think they thought it was when they were developing it, though?
I don't think that I think they hoped it was, but I don't think that anyone really knew. That said, when it was at the Lucille Lortel, it had some mighty big producer names already attached to it, so they
Yeah.
knew that
Yeah.
it had potential, and they just
Yeah.
sort of had to see if it actually went over the way they hoped, and it did.
I
Oh, it
guess
was
I'm
so
always wondering,
fantastic.
what was it before the Lortel? Where was that? Was it just a
Well, if
workshop?
I mean, I've been following Cole's career for 15 or years. Cole has always been. Everyone knows that Cole is brilliant, and hilarious, and it was just a matter of the right vehicle
Yeah.
capturing that. And Cole had to write it himself,
Yeah.
but yeah, but it went bigger than anyone I think imagined, including Cole. Like it caught a wave, and it's wildly successful because
Yeah.
it's very funny, and it's silly, and it works. And I just saw it with Betty Gilpin, and she's very different from Cole, and she's hilarious in it, and it's strange and interesting, and still very funny.
And it's so great that they did that because friends of mine and I who had seen it together, we were like, how is this going to move past him? And doing that casting choice was brilliant.
Yes, and then
And
Titus.
yeah,
This show is going to go like gangbusters in colleges and regional theater. Every like local
I
leading
hope
lady
so.
in America is going to want to play this part.
I mean,
It's
there are a lot of parts in that show that are really
yeah,
fun.
yeah. And it's
Yeah,
stageable because it's deliberately set up on this kind of community theater looking set.
yeah.
So it's going to be great for community theaters.
I can't
I
wait.
hope so. I
The
hope
audiences are
so.
going to flip out.
Yeah, good for them.
It's a very unusual show to play in community theaters, but it'll be
It
fun to
is, but
see it
it's
do
just
it.
so funny and silly. I mean,
So
you
funny.
need people who are really good. This is the
Yeah.
problem. If it's not produced and directed and acted very well, maybe it won't work at all. But it'll be an opportunity. I'm very curious to see how this will go over.
Yeah.
Adam, you're a kid in Canada. You're growing up. I'm imagining you're liking the arts and stuff. And then somehow you become
You
a
can just
major
say
critic.
gay.
You're a big old gay. A Canadian gay.
Wait, gay and Jewish.
Yeah,
I love
then-
that we both glommed onto the things we identify
yeah.
with.
I'm a gay Jewish kid in Montreal, in the Anglo minority in Montreal. So I have this weird, inside-outside relationship to a lot of things, and I think that's been useful as a critic. I think probably people look at me and say, "Oh, that's a cis white." Middle-aged now, guy that seems pretty establishmenty, and yet also sort of gay, Jewish, and immigrant. you know, I mean, and of course, being an immigrant from Canada, who came here, through Harvard is not the same as being a refugee from the third world.
Absolutely.
But it is also not the same as being a natural born American citizen. It has shaped a lot of decisions that I've made in my life in very significant ways.
And you have an out that we don't have.
That's true. I can always run home to my parents.
Yeah.
But how did you go to Harvard to study writing?
No, I went. I went as an undergraduate. So I was. I thought that I was going to be in government. That's what I thought I was going to be. I was a big
Yeah.
debater in high school, and I thought, well, that seems like it's going to be. I'll be a lawyer and I'll go into politics or something.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And then I
Big shift.
spent a couple of years there doing that track basically, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the people in it. I didn't like the material. I liked my English electives, and I liked the theater that I was doing on the side extracurricularly. And I thought, well, maybe I can do a double concentration and write something about the language of constitutional law or something like that. But the government department was very difficult about it. And so eventually I just ended up switching my major to English, and in my junior year. So I had to really cram in a lot of courses in the last couple of years that I was there. But oddly enough, or not oddly, a lot of the coursework that I ended up doing was in dramatic literature because that was something I was interested in. And, I wrote my junior and senior thesis on theater stuff, and so I'm one of the rare people in the world who actually actively uses their English degree from college in everyday life. But it worked out, so that worked out nicely. I didn't plan to be a critic, but it just sort of wound up that way, and now I'm grateful to have had some of the classes that I had.
How many years have you been reviewing for TimeOut?
For TimeOut since 2003, so that's
Mm-hmm.
20, coming up on
Wow, those are 4 years.
22
And
years.
before, in the before times, before 2003?
Well, I started writing on the side for a place called Show Business Weekly, which was sort of a backstage like publication in the late 90s, and I started doing that for free, and then on the side of this job that I had, and then I started writing for Broadway.com,
Oh,
which at
gosh,
that point still
right.
had reviews.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Time Out. At this point, I'm the longest tenured critic in New York, at a major publication in New York.
Yeah.
This is the first time someone has gotten an applause on our podcast.
It's so exciting. Thank you.
I'm not standing. I'm not standing,
No, no.
Adam.
Have you thought about moving into podcasting and doing reviews online in that way?
Uh, yeah.
That was a reaction.
It might be interesting. But podcasting isn't the same as reviewing. Reviewing is very compressed and careful.
Yeah.
You're writing something that you want to there's something a bit lapidary about you're carving in stone your opinion, and you want that to be, you want to be careful with that stuff. Podcasting, or even to some extent talking on the internet, is a little looser, and you can be a little freer with your opinions, and also you can range a little outside the limits of the particular project that you're looking at. If I did a podcast, and I think it might be fun, I would like to just do it with someone else who was interested in theater, and we can go in any direction it took us and have guests and whatnot. But I wouldn't necessarily want it to be an hour of us reviewing things.
That also seems like it goes at odds with your regular job. Like, you might write a great article or a great review about a show, and then you're going to talk about it, and then, I don't know, that just seems slippery, slopey.
Yeah.
I'd rather that
More of
my
a chance for
review.
spoilers, more of a chance for...
Yeah, and I hate spoilers. I really avoid them. I hope, like the
You do.
plague. I get mad at them when I see them in other people's writing, and people sometimes will put them in inadvertently. They'll put it in the form of raising a question that you would never have raised before. They'll be like, or they'll say, this heartbreaking new play. If you say it's heartbreaking,
Right.
then it doesn't end. Then the ending.
Right.
Don't say that.
Yeah. I hate knowing anything about a show actually before I go to see it, or a movie or anything like that. I really love surprise. I love not knowing anything I'm going to see.
When does that happen for you? Well, Nancy, I know that happens for you. You embrace that. You're open
I
to that.
totally embrace that.
Like I said earlier, I need to know. When does it happen for you, Adam? Or when's the last time you just walked into something not knowing much?
I walk into things not knowing much all the time.
Wow.
I write the listings, so I know a little bit, because I don't want to just reproduce the press release, so I paraphrase, and in doing so, I'll end up reading the press release closely, maybe doing a little side research on some of the artists involved. But I really try not to know very much at all about new works, and I try to know quite a lot about revivals, and it's helpful that part of my academic study and also part of my personal interests have focused on the history of dramatic literature, and especially things that get revived a lot, like Shakespeare, and Tennessee Williams, and certain musicals. I know those things pretty well. I think that part of your job when you're writing a review of a revival is to place it in historical context, and to talk about how it's in conversation with productions before them, including ones that that you've seen. As you get older as a critic, that's one advantage to getting older, is that you have more personal experience with previous productions, and you can make those comparisons with a bit more personal credibility. But yeah, I mean, and when I'm reviewing a revival, it will tend to be more about the performances and direction that make that revival different from previous ones, and less on whether I think that Macbeth is a good play.
What is the criteria for you to go review something?
I review everything on Broadway, and I review, or I try to review. I go to pretty much everything that's big off Broadway. I don't have very much time to see things that are off, but I do when I can, or when there's some particular project that's interesting to me. I just saw The Barbarians last week at La Mama, which I thought was great. Unfortunately, it's already closed. So that's the problem with the off, is that by the time you see it, there's only a week left, and there's only so much you can do for it. But I'm glad that I saw it. I'm glad I saw those artists, and I enjoyed it.
And you see stuff at BAM and St. Anne's Warehouse,
and I see things
like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I don't write about all of it. I'm changing, and this is something I'll be writing about again in the week ahead. When I write this thing about the star system, I'm also going to be laying out some new approaches for myself in the way I do this, because I think that what I'm going to be doing this year going forward is writing short reviews of everything that I see off Broadway, positive or negative, and they will just simply be short. They'll be shorter reviews. There's a long history and reasons for that as well, but the short version of that is there isn't time for me to do all the listings
Of
and
course.
all of the articles and still also write long reviews for every show I see. It's not possible. And when we started at Time Out, most of our reviews were very short because we were writing for print, and we had specific limits. So we would write 2-paragraph reviews for huge shows all the time. And now we've sort of drifted, because of the internet and other things. I've sort of drifted into writing much longer reviews, which I like doing, but is not sustainable when it comes to these the number of shows that I'm writing and the other things that I'm doing. Because every listing that you see on the website is a separate page that I have created with a full schedule and with photographs and with blurbs, and takes an enormous amount of time to
Yeah, I
assemble.
was going to ask you, how long does that take?
Takes an enormous amount of time to assemble,
Full
and
time.
and it's invisible, and
Yeah.
I'm glad to do it, but it does bite into it, and I've been really pushing recently to have bigger, fuller listings pages again, and I hope that people do go, just bookmark these pages for off Broadway, off Broadway, dance, and go visit those pages every week and see what's playing, and that will help traffic, because ultimately I'm gonna, they can see what the traffic is, and if there isn't any traffic, then at some point they're gonna come to me and say, why are you doing this?
I'm so glad you said that, Adam, because when I teach my little press release workshops, and I use you as an example because you're someone I know and someone everybody knows, but I say, look, Adam's publisher needs to say, good job, a lot of
Yeah.
people clicked on this thing today. So if you're giving him shit images, bad descriptions, incorrect information, that's not helping anybody.
Doesn't help
So,
anyone, right?
yeah, and I also, Adam, tell folks. I mean, look, most of the folks I'm talking to are not off Broadway. They're not Broadway or off Broadway, so it's very
Right.
not likely they're going to be reaching out to you. Although some of them might have said, I say. Adam is an artist. He's just like you. He's just like us. And I don't think, as artists, we are so used to banging on the door and hoping someone will listen. I say, try to approach press people and media people with the idea that you're giving them a gift. You're giving them great content. You're giving them clear information. You're providing them with an awesome photo with the name of the photographer.
Yeah.
Just think of it as a gift and be a good gift giver. Do you think that's...
Yeah, I think that is true. Obviously, everyone who's working on something, wants to have press about it, and I understand that. I also, it's a volume issue, and I can't cover everything, even if I wanted to, and I don't want to, and there would be no point in my doing so, because it's not of great interest to everyone. So I do have
Right.
to make some calls, and but I am trying to be much more. Last year I wasn't listening as many off shows. I'm trying this year to get that back, but I need to be helped by the productions. I'm not expecting people to have beautiful, expensive production photographs, but they should at least have headshots, and they should send them to me. A lot of the time that goes into these pages is not even creating the pages, which, for each event, which again takes a lot of time. It's getting in touch
Hunting.
with people, hunting back and forth. Can you
Yeah.
send me this photo? Can it be a better photo? Can you send me the photographer credit?
Oh boy, that's a big one.
And
Yeah.
it's just so many things.
So, what are all the items, if we could tell our listeners what the items are that you want them to give you besides a great photo, the photographer, what are all the things that you wish people would give you right off the
Send
bat?
me the dates that it's performing, send me where it's
Where?
performing, send me the website to buy tickets, send me how much the tickets cost, send me who the major artists are in it. Ideally with some indication, if you are sending me, sometimes people will send me a page full of all the headshots of the cast. That's great, and I appreciate it, if they don't have a different photo. But sometimes I just, when I'm looking at 10 photos, I don't know who is which photo to use.
Yeah.
So if this is a show about a woman who goes home to rediscover things, then tell me who's playing that woman. Which is
Right.
who are the
That
who
makes
are the
sense.
who are the actors that I should be focusing on. So I'm not using a photo of someone who's playing a waiter in one scene, and
Right.
I don't have to dig that up through looking through their like. I seriously, because I want to do that
Yeah.
right, so I will end up going to people's Facebook pages and looking if they said that they're playing. Like, I shouldn't have to do that.
No,
So
that
It takes
true.
so
It's
much time.
true.
It's just send me
I've
that
done it on
information.
my end before sending stuff to folks like you.
Yeah.
I'm doing that, and it's just like it's really
Send me
exhausting.
that information, and give me a reason. Give me something to run with. Sometimes people will be so coy in the press release. They don't want to give away what the play's about, but they'll just be like a journey into language and
Oh,
the process of home discovery. And you're just like, well, I don't know what that is, and I'm not
right.
going to just copy and paste your language, so I'm going to have to paraphrase it in some way that will probably be wrong, and I don't want to do that. Give me something to work with.
When have people given you a hard time? Like in what instances?
Have they?
No, usually they don't.
Well, I mean, like you're a social guy. You
Right.
review people's shows. Those people go to
Oh,
Club
you mean
Cumming.
for that? Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But sometimes I thought you meant for listings. No, for listings, sometimes I'll get something, where I've made an error, or sometimes there'll be someone. Sometimes there'll be a press person who will be getting back to me clearly because someone in the production has asked them to, and they're doing their duty, and they'll be like, could you please mention that the theater is technically named this after this donor, or that
Yeah.
the show is a co-production of these two companies.
Oh, yeah.
And I understand why they're asking it, and also that information is not necessarily the information that I want to put into a two-sentence listing. I don't think it's what the reader
Audience
wants,
wants, right.
yeah, to know. And so I will say thank you. I can't do that, but I appreciate you bringing it to my attention. And then if it's a mistake, then I will correct it. Always. I love to be told when I've made a mistake. Ideally, please contact me privately, send me a DM, send me
Oh
an
my
email.
gosh, yes, right.
It's nicer. It's a nicer way to do it than to just
Rather than putting
say,
it
"Oh
on
my
social
God, this
media.
asshole," and copy me
Right.
on it. But either way, I would still prefer to know that I've made a mistake, and I would like to correct that as soon as possible because I hate making mistakes. I do. Sometimes you get blowback for bad reviews. It's usually not from the artists themselves because that's just a terrible look, and everyone
Yeah.
knows that there's no way to win the optics of that. But sometimes they'll have surrogates, or sometimes they'll have just people who are really genuinely fans of the show or the artist, and they'll think that you did them wrong, and they'll disagree with you, and I think that's fine. If they're I prefer when they're not mean about it or really aggressive, or when I also prefer when people don't impute motives to me that are often not accurate. But I like to engage with people. I truly do.
Yeah, you do. You always
And
have.
I do engage with people on socials, and I respect that other people have different opinions than mine, and I think that's what makes the world go round, and I don't want my opinion to be the only opinion out there. That said, it's exhausting at a certain point when there's like a coordinated campaign.
Yeah, but you've never been threatened in public at an event because someone at that event got a bad review from you.
No.
Good.
I mean, I've been berated.
As the ambulance goes by.
No, I've been berated on occasion. I've been iced out a couple of times. No, but I mean the truth is I am social with a lot of people who are in the arts. I think more than most critics.
Absolutely.
I think that is helpful for me as a critic in understanding where people are coming from and in remembering that they are people. As a general rule, I do not impose myself socially on people that I've written bad reviews on recently. And if they want to come up to me or interact with me on social, great. And more power to them. And I applaud their ability to shake off or pretend to shake off criticism. I know that criticism can be very hurtful to people, and I don't expect them to like me after I've said something negative about them, especially in theater. In film or television, at least it's all behind you. When you're in theater, especially if you're a performer, you have to get up every night and do the thing.
Yeah.
You have to believe in it. And
Yeah.
And that means you have to believe that someone who has disliked it is wrong, either because they've made a mistake or because they're an idiot. And, maybe sometime later you can look back on it and maybe you'll still think that they're wrong and they're an idiot, or maybe you won't, especially if you've had something successful since then. But in the moment, you're going to be hurt and angry, and I'm not going to impose on that. I'm not going to demand that you like me. That said, there are times when I will come in contact with people where I will forgetfully, or I'll think that that what I said wasn't very harsh, and then it turns out that they were very offended by it, or something that I haven't said, or something that I wasn't positive enough about. But people are very sensitive, and I get that, and I'm sorry to have put them in that position when it happens. It's not something I ever want to do.
It's hard to be objective about your own work when you're in it. It's one thing when you can step back and look at it and go, "Oh, he had a point," or whatever. That's what he got from it. But when you're in it and you've poured your heart and soul into it, you can't. It's hard to take any criticism.
Yes,
it's just the way it's
emotionally, and also it has a personal impact. It has a professional impact. It has a reputational impact. It has a financial impact. You have a lot riding on these things, and I understand that. We're often just the messenger. Is the truth. We are reporting that this is not working for audiences, of which we are one. But still, it hurts to hear that, especially if you've been surrounded by supportive people whose job it is to be supportive. Your friends and your family and all those people and the people in your show are all going to be telling you it's
great.
good.
It's great.
Yeah, because they should. That's what they're for. Yeah. That's what they're there for. But so it can be jarring and upsetting to hear otherwise. But artists are they.
You're talking to two. Be careful.
No, I don't mean this in a bad way. I just mean if anyone, no one is as hard on shows as other artists are on shows.
Exactly.
I mean, it's not. They don't.
Or to ourselves.
Or to themselves. But not necessarily. But they don't want that to be in public, and I understand that it's humiliating. But the other thing is there is that time factor. I talked to John Kander once, who's a lovely, lovely man, and he was. I'm the president of the New York Drama Critics Circle, and we were giving an award to Hamilton a few years ago, and John very sweetly agreed to give this award to Lin-Manuel, and he arrived early, and we were chatting for a bit, all very nice. And then he asked me, basically, he said, you seem like a nice fellow, and seem like you like theater. I don't understand why you would possibly want to be a critic,
Wow.
And he didn't mean it in a mean way. He was genuinely, like, why would you do this? Why, people will hate you for it, and it's it's just so negative. And I said, well, I know theater people don't like us when we're mean, but they do like us sometimes when we're nice. And like your song in Curtains, your song in Curtains, the whole thing is like, what kind of jerk would be a critic? And then in the last verse, they get a nice review, and it's like, what kind of brilliant man would ever become a critic? And he said, yeah, but that was a joke. We put that in for a laugh. So they would have somewhere for their song to go. Now, two responses. First of all, again, it was a genuine conversation. It wasn't him putting me down. He was genuinely curious, and this is not a knock on John Kander, whom I love. But I'll say two things about that. One is that, I've read John Kander. John Kander and Fred Ebb did a terrific little oral history interview book some years ago called, I think, Colored Lights. And in it, they very candidly discuss all their past work. And it's clear that they know which of their shows are really great and which of their shows aren't. They know perfectly well. So, they can look back and say, oh, that one really didn't work. It's just that they don't like when other people say it.
Right.
Right.
And sure, yeah, I get that. But also, some of their shows are better than others. There's a reason that Chicago and Cabaret and, are like shows. All-time classics of the American stage, and some others that I won't mention are not. So there's that. The second thing is, what it comes down to at some point is, do you think that critics should exist at all? Do you think that there is a role to be played for public discussion of the quality of shows as a counterpoint, if nothing else, to the other factors like advertising and IP and all the rest of that? So do you think they should exist at all? Maybe you don't. If you do think that they exist, that they should exist, and that they have a role to play, then the question is, who should do it?
Right.
And someone, for me, I do think it should exist, and I think, well, I'm someone who can do it.
And someone who loves theater and knows theater.
I love this material. I know this material. I spent years studying this material at high levels. I've seen thousands of shows. I'm rooting for all of them to succeed. I try to write as engagingly and cleverly as I can and try to keep the conversations lively, and I think I'm good at it. And I would rather that I be doing it than someone I trust less than me.
I like that.
Because I agree with myself most of the time.
Adam, before we let you off to your next venture tonight, And if you're off tonight, thank God. But two things. One, can you help make Cats the Jellicle Ball come back to life?
Oh, what a great production. I mean, I loved it. I wrote a very fond review of it.
You did.
That's an example of a show that I never had particular love for as a stage show. I mean, I have a nostalgic fondness for a lot of the songs from having heard them, but
Of course.
but this was the best account maybe that's ever been of this show. That makes it work the most.
Why
clearly.
is it not coming back?
Well, it didn't come in immediately for a few reasons. One is to maintain the concept, it can really only either go into Circle in the Square or go into a theater that they have spent millions of dollars transforming, like they did with
Many other
Cabaret
shows.
or Here Lies Love, and that's a very expensive and dicey proposition. So the other thing is that Andrew Lloyd Webber had another reimagined revival of a musical on Broadway this year that I don't think that we particularly wanted to compete with, and has another one coming off Broadway this season, probably, or early next season, for Phantom of the Opera, which they
I'll go to that with you.
yeah, sure. but they also don't necessarily want to compete with, and so it's in a bit of this bind where I don't know if they want to bring it in all that fast. That said, I think it's the best of the bunch probably, and I mean I haven't seen the new Phantom, but I think it's probably the best of the bunch, and I liked Sunset, but I thought that that Cats is just sensational.
Okay, and then my second question is, what is the number one show you're looking forward to that's opening this season?
Oh boy,
What you're just giddy about?
I don't know. There's too many of them coming up at once for me to be
Okay,
giddy about any of them.
Give me two.
I really love Carol Churchill, so there's a Carol Churchill play coming off Broadway. It'll be 4 short pieces, which isn't necessarily like my very favorite form of Carol Churchill, but I'll take anything I can get. She's just one of the great playwrights
Totally
in
agree,
the world,
and I love
and
those 4 short pieces.
can't wait to see whatever it is that she has up her sleeve. And if I hate it, then I'll hate it, but I'll hate it because it's something fun and engaging that I don't like. So I'm always excited for that. I'm excited to see Brendan Jacobs Jenkins' new play, really, on Broadway. I think that Purpose, I've really loved An Octoroon, and I really liked Appropriate a whole lot.
Comeuppance, anyone?
Comeuppance I like too. Right. So,
Okay.
I mean,
Obsessed.
he's just
Obsessed.
he's on a great streak, and so excited to see that.
I'm so glad these two shows that you're giddy about are 2 shows that maybe our listeners are not even aware of. So that's fantastic.
Well, yeah.
And that Pete
Find
might
out
be able to go to them.
go to my page.
My plan, it is working.
Go to the upcoming Broadway and upcoming off Broadway pages on TimeOut, and you'll see my list of the shows that are coming up this season. And and go to the off page all the time. That changes over every 2 weeks, because of the nature of these shows.
Off sometimes only
and
run
dance
for a
shows
few
too.
weeks.
Dance shows run for like a weekend,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
maybe 2 weeks at the Joyce at the most.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, other than the big ballet, Lincoln Center things which run for weeks, but other than that, maximum 2 weeks at the Joyce. So go.
Yeah.
You can go there all the time, see what's new, and plot to go, because this is frickin' New York City. This is at your disposal in a way that it is at nowhere else. So go.
Hey, thanks for checking us out. Links to today's guest can be found in the show notes.
Don't forget to subscribe, like us, rate us, and tell all your friends about arts and craft.